Hey everybody. It's actually been kind of a while since I put out a YouTube video. I haven't really been streaming altogether that much. It's not because I don't want to be. It's because I've been spending the majority of my time with a pretty fantastic woman who I was hoping that I could introduce you to, who sadly has just recently passed away, and that's my grandmother. Now, she goes by a lot of different names. If you're the feds, you know her as Victoria. If you loved her very much, but you're a little bit too old to be calling her Grammy, she was Vicky. If you really wanted to get under her skin, you could call her Vic, but really that was just my dad and his brother who could do that. But to me, she was a Grammy. And if you ever had the opportunity to meet her, and she knew that whoever you were with really cared about you, she would demand that you call her Grammy too. So I picked one of the photos I liked most about her. But we are going to go a little bit back in time here. This is basically right when I'm graduating college. So you're going to see circa 2012 Macrobio Boy here. And now flat brim, UMass Amherst, fitted cap on a sideways tilt, and ridiculous amount of various antique crosses aside. This beautiful little meatball with a permed haircut right next to me is my grandmother. And this woman effectively raised me, but for that to make sense, I guess we should jump back a little bit in the lore of Macrobio Boy, because I am very lucky to have two incredibly loving parents, but it was my grandmother, who, no joke, has been there for just about every single important and unimportant thing that has ever happened in my life. My parents had me when they were incredibly young. They were just 19, and sadly, about a year or two into me being born, they had to separate. It just really wasn't working out for them. Luckily, my mom was able to move back home with her grandmother in the projects, and my father was able to move back in with his mother, my grandmother that you're seeing right here. And now, luckily, my great-grandmother on my mom's side, my Nana, she also did a pretty great job in raising me, and maybe I'll have the opportunity to introduce you to her at some point in the future. But with my dad working full-time and mostly night shifts back at a department store that doesn't exist anymore, and eventually my mother joining into the armed services in the army, they needed a lot of help making sure that I wasn't left alone, I was fed and clothed, and somebody was there to take care of me and to love me. And that's where Grammy really stepped in. I have so many memories, millions of them, countless really, where every single time I think about who was there with me, and it's 99, near 100% of the time, my grandmother was either right there next to me or just a room away. Spent a lot of time with her up at her house that she actually had with my uncle, her other son, and they had a pool, so obviously that was a big draw, but we would just spend weekends spending time together. We drove a lot. We felt like we were always kind of doing errands. We would count yellow cars as they drove by. If you ever found me to be pretty particular about numbers and patterns, this is where I got it from. Thanks, Grammy. I appreciate the genetics. One of my favorite things that I would do with my grandmother, something called yard sailing. I don't know if other people do yard sailing, but it's basically people want to get rid of the stuff in their house, but they don't quite want to donate it. It's worth some money. They'll put it out on tables and you get to go haggle with them. It's where I got my first ever original Game Boy. I would go dig it out, but we're packing for the move. So my big gray brick Game Boy, the battery latch was already a little bit loose, so it would kind of come out a lot. And that's the first game system I ever had where I got to play Pokemon. Got it for $5, by the way. That was pretty cool. And my grandmother got that for me. But it's not just all the things that she has done for me or the support that she's offered me, because I could go on and on about that. But I'm kind of hoping, and even just making this little video here, to enshrine a bit of her, you know? Unless YouTube goes down, theoretically, people forever may be able to learn about my grandmother. So, what do I think is important to tell you about her? Well, she lived to the ripe old age of 86. It was pretty impressive. Her mind was sharp as ever. The only thing failing was her body. She had congestive heart failure, wasn't really operable. And over the past 7 months, that's been deteriorating pretty aggressively. That's why I've just been gone for this entire past week. I've just been in the hospital with her. But that's, I'm just glad that we got to be there and that her family got to be there with her. And that's probably the most important thing that I hope that you get to learn. It's that family was pretty important to her. I actually forgot that this picture existed. But again, so that's me, the douchebag right there. And there's Grammy, little meatball. In her hands is little Mikey. That's my little brother. It's my father's son. I'm 20 years older than Mikey. I know, pretty crazy, right? But the girl next to me is my sister. We call her Bella, and she's my mom's daughter. But every person in this picture was my grandmother's baby. Once you were one generation down, you were her baby. Didn't matter whose parents, didn't matter who were your parents, didn't matter how distantly related you were. Hell, it didn't even matter if you were blood related at all. Friends, distant cousins, adopted kids, everybody in my very, very large Italian family was her baby. And we all knew it. And whoever you put in front of her got that exact same amount of love. Up until her passing, she wore the mantle of the matriarch of our family. She knew everybody. My memory can't get past first cousins, and I'm sorry. It's not meant to be offensive. I can't do that. That's just not how I remember things. But even on her last day here with us, she was explaining to one of my cousins, who I call auntie. I don't know. That's just anybody who's older than me is my aunt or my uncle, but really they're my first and second cousins. That's just kind of how the family works. But she was explaining to one of my aunts how her great grandparents, siblings, kids were related to her through this side of the family and who was married to who. And, she probably wouldn't talk about a lot of it out loud depending on who was around, but she also knew all the tea, everything you weren't supposed to know. Even her own set of kids were across multiple marriages, multiple husbands, multiple wives. And they could all call her Grammy. She was fierce. She could be scary. You gotta remember, I'm not very tall. I'm about 5'8". This lady is maybe 4'10" on her best day, but she'd fight anybody for any reason if she felt like you were putting her family at risk, no matter how small that was. She was a hairstylist. Spent a lot of my early childhood growing up in one of her own owned businesses, one of her own hair salons. There was a while where she was a little bit of a mogul around here. She owned a ton of properties. She owned a ton of salons. She owned a restaurant. Her family's actually owned multiple restaurants now that I think about it. And while all of that kind of fell away, it all had to get sold off. And really, she lived a pretty humble life, especially near the end. She was worldly. She traveled all the time. My grandmother's been to 10, 20 times as many places as I have. She loved good food. Luckily, she's told us her gravy recipe and a meatball recipe. It might seem kind of silly, but one of the things that I'm most proud of is for things like Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, I get to cook the ravioli. My dad does the gravy and the meatballs now. And I remember the first year where her arthritis was bad enough where she wouldn't be able to work over the stove. And I said I'd give it a shot. My ravs were not good that year. I overcooked them. I didn't put enough gravy in between them. They all got stuck together. And I promised that the next year I would do better. And then next year she's in the kitchen with me and she's harassing me and she's questioning me and she's asking me how long they've been in and why I haven't taken them out. And, this is all loving, but I got to kick my grandmother out of the kitchen. I got to say, you go sit down. You go take a nap. We'll handle it. And every party after just got better and better. She would always compliment me. Oh, and it wouldn't be a completely honest video if I didn't tell you that she was an absolute nag. She loved being in everybody's business. She was so nosy. I'd go up to visit her. I'd try to get food with her at least once a week. She really looked forward to that. We'd get something from a different place every week just to kind of keep things fresh. Whenever she could, she'd have literal eyes looking out of the blinds, just moving one aside to be able to go check to see what the other old biddies were about and what they were doing and who was talking to who. And she always had little bits of gossip. She had this crazy group of just revolving girlfriends just all the time. Like back in the day, use of the word girlfriend, where every time I showed up, there was some new little drama or somebody didn't want to come to get sherbet ice cream after they met up at the senior center, and all these people. And she loved it. She was so social. She never really wanted to stop moving. She always wanted to be driving somewhere. She was incredibly independent. She worked even into her early 80s. Like, she didn't retire if she wanted to. She retired because she had to. But everywhere she went, she collected some new person, like a little Pokemon master. She had to catch them all. And just everybody loved her. Now, it also meant you had to do a lot of chores for her. And she would never ask you directly. She'd bring it up, kind of like you were having a conversation about it the whole time, but you weren't aware. She'd look at me and she'd go, MJ, there's a stain in my carpet. I'd be like, oh, yeah? Yeah, is somebody going to get that out? She's like, well, I bought the carpet cleaner, but obviously I can't get down there. And I'd be like, yeah, that stinks. Yeah. And then I'd look up and she'd be looking at me. She kind of had this thing she did with her eye. She'd be like, and she'd look over at the carpet cleaner. I'd be like, oh, would you like for me to clean the carpet for you? She'd be like, oh, if you wouldn't mind, if I don't want to rush you or whatever. It was infuriating because you knew it was coming. And everything had to come along with a little chore. But it was a way where you could let her know that you cared about her. And you wanted to help make her life easier. And she wanted you to want that because she wanted that for everybody in her life. Even when she couldn't drive anymore, where if she wanted to go anywhere, we'd have to get like 6 tanks of oxygen and load them into a car. She'd always be like, well, I can drive you, baby. You don't have to worry about that. I'd be like, Grammy, wait, who are you driving anywhere? I'm here to pick you up. But she meant it. It might take her 3 hours, but she'd come pick you up. You might have to rush her to the hospital after, but she'd make sure that she picked you up. She was doing that really all the way up until the end. Now, I think if I cut out all the points where I kind of couldn't keep talking here, this is probably still a pretty long video, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. But I guess I just want to say I'm sorry I kind of went radio silent. Oddly enough, I was dealing with something pretty important. And there's still a lot of work to be done. And luckily, she had my dad and everybody in her family, but he's doing a lot of the work and I'm trying to help him as much as I can. So I'm not even saying that tomorrow you should start expecting regular uploads, but I at least wanted to get this out there so that for the people who have been asking and for the people who've been wondering, or even for just the people who completely forgot that I even made videos, you at least know where I've been. For the people who do watch my stuff all the time and who have been worried, I appreciate y'all. I love y'all so much. Thank you. I know ultimately what I do here is not particularly important, but I'm glad that people enjoy it. I'm glad that people get the entertainment out of it or the education out of it that they want. And if you're looking to thank somebody who, my dad said, and this is a quote from my dad, all the goodness in me didn't come from my dad. It didn't come from my mom. It came from a Grammy. So if you're ever looking to thank somebody, say thank you to Victoria here, but don't call her that. Just call her Grammy. All right, y'all. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing y'all again soon.